I'll never forget the very first crossdresser I ever dated. Well, I guess dated might be a little bit of an exaggeration, but back when I was living in Valencia, I met a man on the internet, and back then, my type, please don't judge me, was men who wore affliction t-shirts, cargo pants, and had lifted trucks. You know, real Duty McDudersons, right? Mind you, I grew up in the suburbs in the 2000s, and that was just very much the prototypical masculine suburban dude at the time. And back then I was particularly invested in heterosexism, so I wanted to date a hypermasculine man, frankly, to validate my femininity. And so I met this guy online and we talked back and forth, but he would never make time to actually hang out with me, which back then wasn't too terribly uncommon for me as a trans woman, because a lot of men have discomforts with people knowing that they are involved with a transgender woman. Now, every Thursday night at Cal Arts, we had gallery shows. And gallery shows were definitely the time where you would step out and maybe flirt with somebody and, you know, maybe trip and fall on a dick or something. In Valencia, basically, there's nothing to do, and Cal Arts was definitely the most interesting thing. So it wasn't too terribly uncommon for locals to show up. And one night, I happened to see this guy that I was talking to online at the gallery show. I walked up to him very excitedly and was really eager to connect with him and, you know, maybe make a few mistakes that evening. But he turned to me, and I kid you not, I'm not just saying this because he's white, but the color left his face. He was absolutely gobsmacked, and he ran in the opposite direction. I mean, I've never had anything like this happen, but this guy was so paranoid of people seeing us together that he literally ran the opposite direction of me. So I go back to the apps trying to find a new man for me to obsess over for a week, and I happen to get a little bit curious about the competition. You know, who are the girls in the area that are also trying to find these dudes with affliction t-shirts and cargo pants? So I changed my settings, and I noticed somebody who looked a little bit familiar. Now, this guy had a very distinctive face. He had kind of like one of these like upturned nose kind of situations, and I saw a girl with a very similar nose. And I click on that profile, and I see the guy who just ran away from me. And not only is he a cross-dresser, but he's a slut for BBC Clock. You know, I mean, he was all about being degraded, all about having sex with anonymous men. He wrote very extensively about this, and I wasn't quite expecting that from a dude who presented himself in that way. Now, I bring that up because it feeds into a theory that I have about the subject of today's video. A washed-up reality TV star who recently did, I guess, a social experiment where he came out as transgender, only to say later that it was all just a hoax to prove that the woke agenda has gotten out of control. But I'm getting ahead of myself as per usual. Hi, my name is katblaque, and I like to think that I make content for introspective hot people. And if you're here, I'll assume that's you. And if you're brand new here, you know exactly what to do if this video pleases you. Click my button and join us right here on the channel. So I'm gonna start out with some honesty here. I don't know too much about Josh Seiter. I don't really watch reality TV anymore. If Poe hasn't made a video about it, shout out to my girl, My Thoughts. I just honestly don't keep up with it. But I have seen some of Josh Seiter's posts here and there, and I'm gonna be really honest, every single one that I saw made him ultimately saying that it was a hoax very, very unsurprising. Initially, I wasn't gonna make this video, but I figured that I would come to you guys and share some thoughts because it's very clear to me that at least on the conservative side of the internet, there are a lot of people who are entertaining this as a very real story that is making a very real point. But there is something to this story that I haven't really seen very many people talk about, and it has a little bit to do with the story I told at the very beginning of this video. So let's get into the whole lore of Josh Seiter. Now, Josh Seiter began his career, so to speak, as one of the very first people to be eliminated on season 11 of The Bachelorette. In 2021, Josh Seiter would come out as pansexual, and in 2024, he would make a post on Facebook saying that he was actually a transgender woman. Now, a lot of people did not respond positively to this, but there were indeed a few people who gave him words of support and supported supported his transition. But he mostly received a lot of ire and criticism from the more Republican side of the internet. Now, because I haven't really watched a lot of his content, I figured that we would give it a look-see in this video. And I'm going to tell you right away that my main theory about this is that Josh Seiter is just grifting because he doesn't get a lot of attention, right? Josh Seiter doesn't even have a Wikipedia page. I have a Wikipedia page, right? To me, it's very obvious that this guy is grifting, and I think some of these videos are going to confirm that. But I wanted to show you a few, and then I'm going to give you some of my thoughts about them. So I'm on his TikTok right now, and he only has 4,321 followers, which I think, is pretty sad. But most of his videos don't really get a ton of views. I'm not saying that that is good or bad, but I am saying that it is definitely not working for him right now. This whole thing that he did for like 5 months, definitely not really working for him. But anyway, let's watch a couple of his videos. Let's watch the video. He says, "Is it cramps or is it Chipotle?"
Hey everyone! So I just wanted to talk today about an issue that we all think about, but we don't really like talking about. Is it that time of the month? Or is it something I ate? Newsflash, trans women get cramps and bloating too, just like any other woman. And it's very real and very painful. And our journeys cannot be discounted. And in fact, I challenge anyone out there to think really hard and come up with one thing that makes me different than any other woman out there. Okay, because we have a shared struggle and we go through all these things together. So I just wanted to hop on here, share that. Bye, everyone.
Now, first and foremost, right, I always think that the idea that transgender women have periods is pretty ridiculous. But I will say that one of the side effects of HRT is digestive issues. And a lot of times you'll experience that around the time when you need to take more hormones, right? So it's really common for transgender women to sort of experience something once a month, because that's usually the cadence in which a lot of trans people end up taking hormones, right? So there's something there, but it's not the same thing as a period. This is a point that I have debated on the internet, and I can tell that Josh is sort of getting this idea from the internet, from discourse that has happened online about transgender women. Now, one thing that we're going to start by clocking, and I want you guys to pay attention to this as we watch a couple of the videos, is to me, as a person who has thought about this shit before, I can tell that the way Josh Seiter is putting himself together has a little bit of thought, right? He's wearing these over-the-shoulder shirts so that his shoulders don't seem too broad. He clearly has cultivated a certain style. I don't think it's a very good one, but he certainly has cultivated a certain style. And even if we can acknowledge now that this is all fake, looking at some of his outfits, looking at some of the way that he put himself together, there's a part of it that's a little bit genuine, which we will dive into a little bit later. So let's watch another one. Let's watch Taking Care of Our Feminine Health.
Hey everyone! So I'm doing my makeup, but I just wanted to take a second to talk about a really important issue that affects so many of us. There's a lot of people out there that don't have to worry about this, but there's also a lot of women like me that do. And that's getting our prostate checked and getting screening done for prostate cancer. This is just so important, especially if you're at risk and you're getting older, that you take care of this. And so this is just an issue I feel very strongly about. I feel that it should be part and parcel of any OBGYN exam. It's time we start prioritizing women's health in a very real way. And so I just wanted to get on here and talk about it because it's a taboo subject for a lot of women out there. But anyways, never feel bad for putting your health first and putting you first. So anyways, I just wanted to share that with you.
So obviously this is a post that's kind of referencing another discourse that happened on the internet, right? What a lot of people don't understand, I guess, is that there are transgender women who go to OBGYNs. Those transgender women however, are generally post-operative. And for a transgender person, you're going to want to go to a healthcare provider that is actually able to give you the care that you need. So a trans woman would not go to an OBGYN to get her prostate checked. But is it true that transgender women do need to be aware of things like prostate cancer? Yes. In the same way that we, and everyone actually, needs to be aware of the fact that maybe you're not a cis woman, but you may still develop breast cancer, right? It is very true that trans women should be aware of their prostate and the health of their prostate, right? But that doesn't really have anything to do with an OBGYN, right? And so obviously he's saying this to upset women who care about women's health during a time where women's health is being contested. And this is a video that's clearly created to upset people. Now, the funny thing about this is that when I read the comments, it's not really getting the response that I think he wanted. There's one person who says, women don't have a prostate, men do, don't mix it, right? But a lot of the other people are clearly just joking. Someone said, brave and courageous. Which would be my comment, honestly. Someone at the top says, you are so caring. I'm scheduling a prostate exam with my OBGYN today, right? Like, I think some people, I would honestly argue most people, did not take Josh Seiter seriously. And I'm going to be transparent and say that the few posts that I did see, really weren't posts that I took seriously. So when he came out and said that he wasn't actually a transgender woman, it was like the most unsurprising thing anyone could have ever said about this man to me. Anyway, let's watch another one. I think I turned my cat trans.
Hey everyone! So I got my cat Ollie here, this emotional support vest. But he hasn't been liking it, and it's really disappointing because I really thought I was going to have an ally in this journey. But instead of it helping me, I just noticed a lot of changes with Oliver. He's been a lot more moody and just kind of angry and sulking around.
Oh my God.
And I feel
Such
terrible. And I'm starting to think he might be an empath.
Wow.
And he might have gender dysphoria by proxy. And I feel terrible because I know the heteronormative expectations placed on him as an assigned male at birth cat. So I guess the lesson here is you can't be something you're not. You can't cosplay being an emotional support pet if you don't have the proper training. So anyways, I need to return this thing. It was like $20 and then shipping and handling was like $5.99, and it took forever to get here. But anyways, lesson learned. So let that be a warning to everyone out there. Not all pets.
See, if this was not him genuinely trying to like make a point, this would actually be really funny to me. I guess it is funny to me. Like, my favorite kind of joke to make is, oh my God, you're not being an ally right now. Insert something insane, right? It would be funny to me, but like, he's clearly trying to make a certain point, right? So when I look up Josh Seiter on YouTube, I predominantly see conservatives speaking about him. There's Tim Pool at the top, and we all know that he's a Russian asset and definitely a conservative. There's the interview where he comes out as not actually being transgender. There's a Bunk Angel video that he made about him, another Tim Pool video, another Tim Pool video. Like, to me, what's fascinating about this is here you have somebody who is making fake outrage content, obviously to bait conservatives, right? And conservatives are the ones who are predominantly speaking about it. But we're going to see in the interview that he does that he lays this at the ground of the left, which I find to be kind of interesting. So let's watch. So this is like a really long video, so we're going to try to watch this. Let's see how it goes.
What's going on?
Well, I'd love to, but first, I don't want to insult anybody. This makeup's terrible, so I need somebody to come fix it.
Jimmy, come here, Jimmy, right now. Hurry, Jimmy, hurry, run. We have a limited time frame for this episode. Jimmy's gonna, he wipes down everybody, so Jimmy.
He loves wiping men.
He loves wiping men, so look at that, wipe him. Jimmy, wipe him
like
clean.
like
Jimmy, make sure he's 100% clean.
Okay, not that rough.
Not that rough, Jimmy. Have you ever used smelling salts, Josh?
Come on.
No.
Come on.
Before we start the show, you should
Let's
probably
get to the point, you guys. Let's get to the point.
You've never done smelling salts, Josh.
Pali.
So what's this all about? You're wiping off the makeup?
I
Pali.
have to redo it. This is terrible.
Pali, come on, let's get to the
Your
point.
people did a terrible
Pali.
job.
Okay, don't edit this part out, Jimmy, because
Yeah,
the makeup
you should have
artist is
edited
gonna
this
stab
part
me
out.
If they know that
You can get out of here. You're kind
Get out of here, Jimmy. Get
How
out of here.
boring.
You're ruining this.
Hurry up, let's get to
You're
the point.
ruining it, Jimmy. You ruined this whole damn show. So, Josh, you look a lot different right now. Me looking at you, you seem like you look a lot different. What's up?
I'm dead because he literally looks the same. There is no difference. He just looks a little bit like, I guess, less. He doesn't have lipstick on. That's it. It's literally it. And I find it funny that this was like a point that they tried to make during the show, like taking off your makeup. Oh my God. If you follow me on TikTok or Instagram or any of my other social medias, you know that I very regularly make content without makeup. I've never thought that wearing makeup validated my gender. Honestly, I wear makeup because y'all like to comment on it, and it just helps me in the algorithm a lot. Just being transparent about it. It's just so simplistic. It's a little bit too simplistic, but anyway.
What's it all about?
Well, I have to be honest with everybody. Let me get the last of this.
Get the last
I don't
of
want
it.
any makeup.
Pali,
No, we don't want any makeup.
Pali.
This is monumental, dude. This is huge. There's some dry paper towels below. If
How
your
long
face
is this gonna
a little
go?
Wet. I think there's some
Pali.
underneath you.
Pali.
The people want to know what's going on, Josh.
Dry ones.
Right
Come on,
there.
come on.
Amazing. I'm
see.
glad
on.
you guys listened to my instructions.
Pali.
What did we do? If Jimmy messed up,
Pali.
did Jimmy
Oh my-
mess up?
I'm-
Please, you're Yes.
Well, I
Okay,
got to
here we
be
go.
honest. For the last 5 months, I've been conducting a social experiment online to expose how gullible and how delusional the left is.
I can't believe they did the sound effect too. I'm dead.
We love it, Josh. And now I'm so happy that you came on this program and you're so gracious to fly all the way here from Chicago to come speak with us and talk about how insane the world is that you putting on a woman face, I guess is that the best way to describe it?
Yeah, woman face.
You were accepted by some, you were demonized.
Wearing makeup is woman face, right? Like, do you get how simplistic this sounds? Like, most of us look at makeup as genderless, right? Yes, maybe you have the expectation as a heterosexual man that men don't wear makeup and women do, right? But that doesn't mean that trans women are wearing makeup because they think it makes them a woman, right? That's kind of the point I think they're trying to make here, that, oh my God, he took his makeup off and now he's not a woman. But like, no one actually thinks that, you know?
By most, and now you're saying this was all a ruse, this was a social experiment, and I know you studied sociology.
Oh.
Did you major in sociology?
I did, yeah.
So what you did,
If I were to go out on a limb, and I'm going to say this without doing any research about him, and I will actually look this up after, I bet that Josh Seiter went to school for sociology, but he went to school actually on like a sports scholarship. So he chose sociology as like the easy thing to do. He probably didn't really pay attention to his classes. He probably went a couple of times. He probably made like the base amount of grades that he needed to make in order to like participate in school sports. But I doubt that he ever actually like listened to or paid attention to his sociology class, because most of the arguments that he's making in this video are not arguments that trans people make or people who are understanding of, gender as a social construct, right? Like, yeah, you wearing makeup doesn't make you a woman, but also people aren't really saying that. The argument is just that as a social construction, we expect women to wear makeup, but wearing makeup or not wearing makeup doesn't actually make you a woman. Anyway.
Yep.
so what you did is arguably one of the greatest social experiments of our modern internet age, in my opinion. And
Is it really the greatest social experiment of the modern? I'm sorry, because again, like when I saw his posts, they never really seemed genuine to me at all. Like I didn't look at these posts and say, wow, here is this bachelorette coming out as, a transgender woman. I thought it was what it actually turned out to be, a conservative trying to make a parody of transgender women. It wasn't very convincing to me, but I bet it was convincing to a lot of conservatives who are functioning from like a really ignorant point of view. And frankly, I've been online making content on YouTube since 2005. I've been speaking openly about my life as a transgender woman since 2005, right? It's crazy to me how many people would prefer validating something like this over just like listening to what transgender people have to say about their own life and experiences. It's kind of bizarre to me. It really, really is. But I know why that is, because my experience, frankly, in a lot of spaces, and keep in mind, I used to live in conservative areas, I have for most of my life, is that most people don't really care that deeply, right? Now, I'm probably speaking from privilege because I pass, right? Like, I'm read as cis. Most people just assume that I'm a cis woman. So I never really dealt with a lot of bullshit being a trans person. So I guess it's really weird to me when I listen to stuff like this and people are like entertaining the premise of this, because you could just like actually listen to trans people, right? And clearly a lot of the content that he made on social media was based on some controversial things that were said by a very extreme minority of transgender people on the internet. And he is preferring to highlight that, focus on that, than like genuinely engage with transgender people who are trans, who speak of themselves. And I think another issue here is that we tend to narrow down trans experiences to like one or two things, when in all reality, transgender people, like gender, have a very wide range of experiences. Anywho.
You coming on here and talking about the real truth. So this whole time, this has all been a stunt to try to expose the weird ideology of the transgender movement?
Well, I would say any biological man putting on woman face and putting on makeup is pulling a stunt. They are faking being a woman. And so what I did was I faked being a faker. I pretended to be a pretender. We are all the same. We're all men that were putting on makeup and dresses and claiming we were women. And I hope that this could help some people understand that just because you put on dresses and makeup as a man doesn't magically make you a woman.
And I think,
yeah, and you know what? The thing that's annoying to me about this is on the internet, it's very easy for you to get the impression that transgender people are accepted and embraced. Why? Because the nature of a transgender influencer is that they're going to attract people from all around the world who support them and like what they have to post, right? People form these parasocial relationships with these online creators, and they decide to support them and to say positive things about them. But that doesn't actually mean that transgender people in their daily lives actually experience a huge rate of support, right? They don't. In all reality, Josh Seiter would have had to do quite a bit more than wear lipstick for 6 months and, put together these outfits in order for him to actually be accepted, right? Especially to be accepted as a woman. Because as we know, he references here, putting on makeup and wearing a couple of dresses doesn't actually put you in a situation where people accept you as a woman, right? It's interesting to me how people can say stuff like that and then still believe that trans people in their daily lives experience a lot of acceptance. Josh Seiter would not have been able to be accepted as a woman in this society. In all reality, Josh Seiter would have had to have undergone a lot of procedures to even start to be considered in that category, right? That's reality. He would have had to have had thousands of dollars of electrolysis. He would have definitely had to be on hormones for at least 3 years, let those muscles break down. He would have to probably do a little bit of waist training, maybe remove a rib or two, right? Like, let me not give him too many forced feminization ideas. But long story short, he would have to do a lot to get to a point where people would start to actually support him as a woman, right? And that is the reality. I know that I experience a lot of acceptance because of the way that I look. I know that there are a lot of people who look at me, see a cis woman, and treat me accordingly. And mind you, I came out as trans at 15. I'm 34 now. So I definitely have experienced this. I definitely know what it's like, right? He did not really have anything close to an experience that a transgender woman would. But later on in this video, he makes a point of saying that he thinks transgender women are getting a sexual kick from looking at themselves dressed as women.
Autogynephilia is when men are turned on at the thought of themselves being women. And I think a lot of trans women are turned on at the thought of themselves being women. Guess what? It doesn't magically make them women. It doesn't mean we have to accept that they're women. They are simply men turned on at the thought of themselves being women. That's great. We live in a free country. You can do whatever you want, but don't make your fetish my truth.
And when I first heard that, it sounded a little suspicious to me because, frankly, I think if you are genuinely looking at most transgender women, it's hard to really get that impression. But trans women, because they're women, frankly, exist in this society in a way where if they play into objectification, that is one of the ways outside of repulsion that they can gain some sort of social upward mobility, right? That's kind of the situation that a lot of transgender women are placed into, right? You either play into people's repulsion, you fade away into the background and allow people to assume that you are, a biological woman, or you play into objectification. And the people that you see publicly, the people you see on the internet, the people who you are going to have the most access to are probably going to fall into either the objectification category or the repulsion category, right? The people who become successful on the internet generally fall into one of those two categories, right? A few years ago, I made a video in response to Ariel Scarcella, who is obsessive about trans women, definitely has made a bit of content about Josh Seiter. I talk about autogynephilia as a concept, and the one thing that I say is that I don't think autogynephilia really applies to transgender women, but I definitely think from my own experience that it applies to cross-dressers. And frankly, when I look at Josh Seiter, when I look at his outfits, when I look at the way he put himself together, even the thoughtfulness about his shoulder line and stuff like that, it's giving cross-dresser. It's giving cross-dresser. It's giving I dress up in my wife's clothing. It's giving I stretch out her panties when she goes on a work trip. It's giving I like to wear Party City wigs and get my back blown out. That's the vibe it's giving. It's giving my wife can't know about this because if she did, she'd be really upset, and that really turns me on, right? He gives me cross-dresser all the way. All the way. And my theory was only reinforced when I discovered, get this, that he used to very publicly date a transgender woman. So I saw this TikTok, and this TikTok is like what made me want to make this video. Let's watch it because it's very, very interesting.
Hey Josh, you don't know me, but I remember you. I remember when you got dumped for being a clout chaser by actual transgender woman, Miss Monica Beverly Hills of RuPaul's Drag Race. Yeah, and then after Monica dumped you, you publicly crashed out and faked your own death on Instagram. That was weird. But that's not even the crazy part. The crazy part is when Monica called you out for faking your own death, you insisted that you had never even dated her. In fact, you started using they, them pronouns for her, which is a major switch up from the breakup post you had made months earlier. Goofy. Not only that, but you had her Instagram in your profile while you were dating. Hello? So all this little stunt being the result of being dumped by an actual trans woman is fucking insane. Seek help.
And when I saw that, all the pieces started coming together. And this is what I really wanted to get into. So something that a lot of people don't understand is that transgender women have a lot of experiences with men that are not going to be privy to you, right? If you're not a trans woman or someone who dates them, you're not going to know about a lot of these little complex nuances, right? And it may shock you initially that somebody who previously dated a transgender woman would do a hoax like this, where he essentially invalidated her gender. But as I've said in my previous video and in many videos on my channel, it is unfortunately incredibly common for men who are attracted to transgender women to hate transgender women. And the reason I bring up him most likely being a crossdresser is because in my experience with a lot of crossdressers who pursue me, they have this tendency to compare themselves to the transgender women that they are pursuing. The story that I just told you at the very beginning of this video is one that I've experienced many times over. I meet somebody who is in line with what I tend to be attracted to. You know, I like Duty McDudersons. I may no longer date men in lifted trucks, but I certainly like hypermasculine men. And sometimes hypermasculine men who are very invested in maintaining and curating an image of masculinity really get off in a very sexual way on the idea of them being cross-dressed, on the idea of them being feminine. And I don't want to say anything negative about cross-dressers. Not all cross-dressers feel this way, just to be clear. But for a lot of cross-dressers, the process of wearing women's clothing is degrading. Like I said, the guy that I tried to date years ago, when he would cross-dress, he would go and get his back blown out by random men on the internet. And the way he wrote about it was that he was being degraded, because for a lot of these men, femininity is inherently degrading. And as I talk about in my previous video, a lot of these more conservative men who fetishize transgender women, they really get off on this idea of a transgender woman's femininity being something that is presented and curated for their pleasure. And that's actually just an extension of their misogyny in general. They probably do feel the same exact way about cis women, but they probably struggle with cis women. They probably get rejected quite frequently by cis women. And so a lot of times they will approach transgender women expecting for them to be more patient, more open-minded, more accepting of them. And a lot of these men who are cross-dressers will have this assumption that a transgender woman would be accepting of them being a cross-dresser. And cross-dressers, because they tend to have these very black and white views of gender, he probably does cross-dress but still feels like he's a man. And because he gets turned on by it, he assumes that this is the way all transgender women must feel. Now, do I think I'm an attractive woman? Absolutely. I think I'm very, very cute, very, very, very tasty, right? But I don't look at myself and get turned on. I think I look good, but I'm not like enjoying the image of myself as a feminine person because I'm not attracted to feminine people, right? Now, for me personally, because I am unfortunately a very monosexual person, I have always rejected these men because I'm not into it. I don't like women, and maybe this isn't right for me, but like I sort of put feminine men in the same category as I do people that I don't date, you know, like I like, you're my sister, you're not my daddy. You know what I mean? And oftentimes when I've rejected men who are cross-dressers, we have this argument where I'm not really a woman. I'm just wearing clothes. I'm just putting on makeup. I'm just doing this performance. It's not real. It's not valid, right? But at their core, these are men who are conflicted. These are men who are very much struggling with their identity as men. And in truth, the reason why they end up turning their ire towards transgender women specifically is, frankly, because in their mind, right, a transgender woman is the very, very embodiment of what degradation would look like if it was on them. And so for a lot of these men, what they want more than anything is to feel powerful and feel like they are not in the position of a transgender woman, but they will frequently conflate trans women's experiences with their experiences. I mean, sometimes they feel that way because chasers get desperate and fuck them, right? But a lot of times it will always kind of come back to this, right? It'll always kind of come back to them degrading transgender women because they, frankly, have not accepted themselves. When I look at people like Josh Seiter, I can tell that they rely desperately on these structures of heterosexism and heteronormativity and cisnormativity in order to feel better about themselves. To me, when I watch some of his videos, right, it's very obvious to me that Josh Seiter is someone living in some degree of self-denial. And because he's living in self-denial, he has to look at people like myself who have very publicly, very comfortably lived in a happy way within their bodies and say, no, there's something wrong with you, because that just makes him feel just a little bit better about himself. So let's entertain the premise that he was trying to present in this video, right? The premise that people who previously accepted him are now going to be embarrassed and feel shameful for extending support to him. When I was really thinking about this, I really struggled to come up with a downside for respecting somebody's gender identity. And maybe that's because I'm a trans woman, right? But in my life, I've known several people who have come out as one thing, transitioned to another thing. They use this pronoun, then they change their mind. And for me, even though there might be an adjustment period, it's an adjustment that I'm willing to make purely because I don't want to be somebody who is unpleasant, right? I don't want to be the reason that somebody's day is ruined, right? And frankly, a lot of times when people tell me who they are, I do believe them, right? And that's just kind of simplistic to me, right? I can't really see the downside of accepting somebody's gender just to have them say that they're not that gender later on down the line. I'm very curious what you guys personally have to say about that because I can't come up with a downside. Josh Seiter cross-dressed for 5 months and thought that that made a grand statement about transgender women, when in reality, if he actually cared, he would dedicate himself to actually physically transitioning and seeing the way that that would change over time. But clearly, he's just a cross-dresser. It really doesn't surprise me that Josh Seiter dated a transgender woman and then would later come out and be boldly transphobic. That is such a common experience for a lot of men who try to date transgender women and then maybe have a bad experience and want to tear all of them down, right? I think that Josh Seiter is conflating his confusion with my confusion. I know who I am. I know what my biology is. I don't want to go to the OBGYN to get my prostate checked. I don't think that my cat is transgender because he wears pink. All of these things are ridiculous and have nothing to do with what I would say is the average transgender person's opinion. They all have to do with this very simplistic, conservative view of the way that gender must work, right? This is a outsider's perspective of who transgender people are. It's not an expression that reflects the intimate understandings of who transgender people are at the end of the day. I am very aware of who I am. I'm very aware of my station in this world. I don't have any confusion around that, not even vaguely. And so it is really interesting to listen to someone speak as though they understand me more than I understand myself, especially when they just cross-dressed for 5 months and used to previously fuck a trans woman, right? Like, the thing that's a little bit frustrating to me as a trans woman is that I've been making content since 2005 about being transgender, and a lot of people will prefer listening to somebody like Josh Seiter go through a hoax where he pretends to be a trans woman for 5 months. People try to socially punish people who veer away from the gender binary. And that is really all this is, right? That's really all this is at the end of the day. People like Josh Seiter have this desire to other trans people, and they only do it because it makes them feel better about themselves. That's all that it really is. But I will say, one of the things I thought about as I was looking at this is that most of the content about Josh Seiter is made by conservatives, and most of it does not have more than 100,000 views, right? This is by no means a popular story. This by no means built Josh Seiter's platform, right? He was on some strange show, I guess. He's probably going to get a little bit of buzz around this, but I think ultimately the jig is up. And I think that at its core, this is just a desperate attempt at grifting that Josh Seiter is engaging in because he is a washed-up reality TV star with very little to offer the world, if I'm being frank. Also, this is Editing Catherine, and I have some additional points about him being a fame-hungry person. Josh Seiter has apparently dated 2 different members of the 90 Day Fiancé cast. He dated both Karini and Yolanda from 90 Day Fiancé. And additionally, he's also dated some reality TV stars from another show called Love After Lockup, another show that is very heavily covered over on My Thoughts channel. And on top of that, a couple of years ago, he actually faked his own death. So to me, it's pretty obvious that Josh Seiter has very, very little going for him. And this is just one of the easiest stunts that he could do. But anyway, I'm very curious to hear what you guys have to say about this story. I would really love to hear some of your thoughts, so please leave them in the comment box below. This was a story that I just wanted to talk about because I thought it was kind of funny and interesting, so I would love to hear what you guys have to say, so please leave your comment in the comment box below. And right now you're looking at the names of my $20 Patreon members. If you appreciate the things that I create, please consider becoming a Patreon member. I'm going to give a shout out to some of my recent Patreon members. Shout out to Kelsey Swanson. Thank you so much. Shout out to Rosie Top, and shout out to Justin Mendez. Thank you so much for joining my Patreon and continuing to support what I create over here. Anyway, on that note, as per usual, I want you to always remember and to never forget that you are beautiful and you are loved. Bye.